years and years ago. I was musing last night about how organised couples are these days, and I left the loo wondering why I'd left this speech writing until the last bit. No, in actual fact, I'd been preparing this speech for ages and asking lots of brides' fathers, about things to include, but the list was getting very long, and I recalled that Debbie had particularly said I should try to keep this short. In fact, if I included all the things I should say, I worked out that I would have to be speaking for 1 hour and 21 minutes. By that time, you would have drunk the wine that we need to have left to make the toast, so do be patient and keep some for the end, as I've trimmed it down a bit. Then if I left out all the things that were embarrassing or that Debbie didn't want me to mention, then this speech would have been over before it began. However, one thing they all agree on is that the first and most important thing was to thank you all for coming. So to all of the relatives, friends, workmates and neighbours, as well as those last few members of the Colchester Women's Institute who just happened to be in the Bureau suite when we all arrived and are trying desperately to blend in as I speak, our first and biggest thanks has to be to everybody for being here on Debbie and Paul's special day. In many cases you have come so far, and in some cases you're planning to spend a long time with us. I have to apologise to Paul, who always wanted a small and intimate event. The numbers grew like topsy. We all wanted our family and friends, but we managed to accommodate you all and are very pleased that so very many of you accepted and could be with us today. But I didn't escape scot-free. I did have some very important things to do. The hardest of which was to lobby the Football League to ensure that the last game of the football season was to take place tomorrow and not today. Which is no easy task given the new edicts about match fixing and corruption, but the cost of that did fortunately put the cost of this reception into some perspective. But of course our dream match took place today with the unity of Paul and Debbie, which of course is the only thing in our minds. But actually I know Paul has been very busy too, supervising the multiple stag evenings, testing the beer and wines, but I'm not supposed to mention football and man stuff, Debbie says. However, I will say that I was with some South African friends last weekend talking about weddings, and they're actually Afrikaans, but they share the African tradition that even the men on the bride's side, including the bride's father, join in the prenuptial, stag do's, etc., which seemed a great idea to me. But we do things a little differently in Norfolk, as you know. But this bonding of groom and wife's father is just as important, but it has to wait until after the wedding. So with that in mind, I've got a couple of tickets for the match at TV at Carrow Road tomorrow afternoon. It's all right, Paul. Nobody will miss us for a couple of hours. I'm only joking. Sort of. No, my first thoughts are with Debbie, and I'm happy to be the father of such a beautiful bride on such a wonderful occasion. My mind has gone back to all the other happy events, landmarks and near disasters that have preceded this day and made her what she is now. I'm reliably informed that there may well be a few attempts to embarrass the groom today, so in the modern spirit of equality and full disclosure, it's only right that I share a few embarrassing incidents and happenings from Debbie's past with you. I'm just sorry I haven't got any pictures to hand. Debbie is her father's child and has always been a bit of a daddy's girl and a bit like me, bossy, organised, driven. Does that strike a chord with you, Paul? But she's not always been so organised and worldly wide. Very capable now. She did try to walk on water once as a young girl, wearing a huge new sunglasses and a straw hat. This was a victory for style over visibility. Cutting the corner of the outdoor pool, she just walked in and disappeared under the water with just a hat visible and floating. I ran over, moved the hat with one hand, pulled her up first by her head gently, and then with the other by her shoulders, set her back down, put her hat back on, and she walked on, still with sunglasses and bag, until she proceeded dripping to where she was headed, quite unperturbed. If Debbie doesn't always understand something, then she'll hold the event up asking questions, which she has always been encouraged to do. Obviously naive, we were travelling around the country, visiting all of the 6 or so universities for interviews for her optometry degree, while she was deciding where to study, and we ended up in Bradford, where she was just about the only non-Asian potential student at their opening day. Being practical about the experience and seeking consolation, I said, well, at least you'll be able to get great curries around here, And she asked, "What's a curry, Dad?" She certainly had a fair few curries since that day, and subsequently won many of the drinking games at her chosen Aston University after that. But then she's never phased and takes things in her stride. It wasn't long ago when she phoned and asked about AGMs, annual general meetings, what they were about and what was supposed to happen. In my element, I'd explained the entire complicated process that I would organise 6 months out, and added a bit of advice about ways to make them run smoother. I was then shocked when she told me it was a couple of days before the AGM of the Norwich and Norfolk Optometry Society, and that she was their new chairperson, and there'd been little or no practice or preparations for managing the event, and she needed advice. Well, we did what we could in the little time we had, but sadly that didn't include getting the treasurer along at the right time on the right day with the accounts, which I guess were approved in their absence. Boy, are they now organised for next time. But both your mother and I have been very proud that you've grown up to be not only the very successful lady, but the very beautiful bride that got married today. And of course you've been accompanied today by that very handsome man in a dress suit, featuring in all the photos and videos that we've seen recording the happy event. I'm not talking about me. All the best men. And of course it's Paul, and I give my earnest thanks for making Debbie so happy. The love and affection that Debbie and Paul have shown to each other, and the very evident happiness that they have in each other's company, is there for us all to see that know them so well. Paul is so delightfully laid back, almost horizontal sometimes. And that's a great foil to Debbie's organising and cajoling, and I think he actually likes this, as it helps him to get stuff done. I'm sure that he's kept her wonderfully calm as the happy day has approached, with his own very special technique of playing televised sports coverage at great length in times of stress. But when asked what a father looks for in a prospective son-in-law, there's only ever one factor that a wise man wants for his daughter, which is for her to be happy. And I'm pleased that Debbie has chosen Paul, and he has undertaken that role for her. Before closing, it's expected that the bride's father attempts some words of advice and wisdom, which is a daunting prospect. For Paul, I normally suggest there's no argument that can never be settled by those timeless words such as "sorry it was my fault" or "yes dear you were right all along," as the humble male never stands a realistic chance of winning a domestic argument, and might as well concede at the outset, as he will have to do eventually. However, they've already made the best start by agreeing their honeymoon destinations without any problems. That trip to Mexico was ruled out in the nick of time, and they made a call. They made a call to the swine flu helpline and found it was crackling. However, they've been lucky enough to get one of those bargain deals tailor-made for honeymooners in hotels, 4 days and 10 nights. They never used to have those in our day. But offering advice in all seriousness, those of us who have achieved long-term relationships know the value of maintaining good communication, dedicating yourselves to please one another, and having the will to do all things to make the other person happy. Follow this formula and you'll not go far wrong. Knowing Debbie and Paul as we do, we'll feel sure that there's no other couple who stands a better chance than they do in achieving this goal. Marriage in this day and age is far from easy, and so with all the external pressures of day-to-day life, we offer this thought. May your love be modern enough to survive the times, yet old-fashioned enough to last forever. So it's now my very pleasant duty to propose the first toast. So I would ask everybody to please be outstanding for the first and most important toast of the afternoon, to wish bride and groom, Debbie and Paul, all the very best for a long, healthy and happy life together. Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
Bride and groom.
Or is that the video?
You all right, Mum?